Are you thinking about moving to North Dakota, but you're worried about what it actually costs to live here? Today, I'm going over the cost of utilities, groceries, gas, all of it. I'm not holding anything back. I'm actually going to even share the cost of my own utility bill during the coldest month of the year last winter. But the price of one of these utilities is probably going to really shock you, and the cost of childcare is probably really going to shock you as well. So let's get into it. Number one, let's talk home prices. So home prices are going to be the biggest piece to the cost of living puzzle. So the overall median home price here in North Dakota is $281,000. So it's much less than a lot of areas you'll see nationally. A lot of areas have like a $500,000 median home price. Ours is $281,000 in North Dakota. But with that being said, it does include the rural areas of North Dakota. So obviously some areas are going to be more affordable than others. I have my notes here. So Minot has an average median home price of $299,000. Grand Forks comes in at $301,000. Fargo at $301,000. Williston and Bismarck come in at $370,000. Wofford City comes in around $450K, so it really just depends on where you move. Now, these median home prices in some areas you might be looking at a little bit of an older home or a townhome. New construction in a lot of these areas is going to start around $380,000 to $390,000. But Minot is actually going to be, of the bigger places in North Dakota, Minot's going to be the most affordable when you're looking at home prices overall. So price per square foot, you'll get a little bit more value for your money there. But if you have to move somewhere specific for a job, we can always help you find areas around where you're looking at to see if there's something more affordable for you. So there's a lot of options, and our overall home price is actually pretty affordable here in North Dakota. A lot of times people who work in the oil field might purchase a home in Minot or Bismarck and just travel there on their days off because they are more affordable. Now, with that being said, Bismarck is now right in line with Williston, so it kind of just depends on what's going on in the oil market, but Minot's a very affordable option. So, of course, we have all different styles of homes here, newer and older. Now, the older homes might come with more maintenance costs, of course. You might want to update the windows so the heating bill isn't outrageous in the winter, and you might have some higher insurance costs as well. I've seen some pretty affordable insurance premiums on the newer homes here in North Dakota, and they already come with updated windows as well. It really just comes down to what style of home you prefer. Some people really do prefer those older homes that have a lot of original character with them. We have all different styles of homes here too. We have your ranch style with the basement, two-story homes, split-level homes, all of the typical styles that you'll see in the Midwest. We have that here in North Dakota. Okay, so let's talk about flood insurance risks and cost out here because obviously if you have to have flood insurance, it's going to add to your monthly expenses. So Fargo in the Red River Valley is actually one of the most flood prone areas in the state. Obviously, it tends to be more of the lower lying neighborhoods near the river. But Fargo actually does have a diversion project going on, and they're heavily invested in infrastructure. So that diversion project is actually supposed to be completed in 2027, which means that some of those neighborhoods could be remapped on the FEMA flood map. And they could, after that project is completed, be considered low risk neighborhoods, which means you wouldn't have to carry your flood insurance. Now, Bismarck, Minot, and Grand Forks also have certain neighborhoods that are at risk of flooding and require flood insurance. They tend to be the lower lying neighborhoods near the river. But Williston has mainly rural floodplains, which means there's not a lot of houses in the floodplains in Williston. And Watford City doesn't really have any high risk flooding areas because it's not near any major rivers. So flood insurance obviously would add an extra monthly expense, but it's usually those certain lower lying neighborhoods near the rivers. And if you need more information about which of these neighborhoods are in flood zones and which are not, make sure you reach out to us, give us a call, send us a text, or shoot us an email. We help people relocate right here to North Dakota each and every day. Let's talk about property taxes for a second. So North Dakota ranks in the middle tier nationwide for property taxes. So it's not the cheapest and it's definitely not the most expensive. It's not like New Jersey or even Texas. Texas has surprisingly high property taxes. Our property taxes are just under 1% of the home's market value. So if you have a $300,000 house, you'd be looking right around $3,000 a year, so about $250 a month. Now it does depend on which part of the state you end up in, because you're also going to have some local taxes as well added in there. But overall, North Dakota is not the cheapest property tax wise, but it's also not necessarily going to break the bank. Number 2, HOAs. So we don't have a lot of HOAs here in North Dakota. It's only about 6 to 10% of households here. And the monthly fees start at $20, with the average being $157 a month. The HOAs here usually cover like your common area snow removal, common area landscaping, common area lighting. They don't have a ton of amenities like you might see in an HOA in Florida. Like if you look at an HOA in Florida, they might have like 3 swimming pools, a tennis court, a yoga studio, all kinds of amenities. They don't usually have those kinds of amenities here in North Dakota, but they also don't have the same cost. So HOA in Florida might run you $500 a month or more, but here they're very affordable and we just don't have a lot of them. Now, if you do end up in a condo situation here, which isn't super common in North Dakota, but if you do, a lot of times they'll cover a good portion of your exterior insurance, which can kind of help to offset those HOA fees. But overall, I would say if you're moving to North Dakota, you can plan on the HOAs being very affordable if you do end up in an HOA community. Number 3, utility costs. In North Dakota, you obviously have a cold winter climate, which can play a part in your cost of living, but electricity here is actually surprisingly affordable. My electricity bill during the coldest month of the year last year was only $225. And that's for a 2,200 square foot house. And you guys, we're talking about -20, -30 degree temperatures sometimes. So it's really not too bad for those extreme temperatures. In the summer, my electric bill was really only about $65, $75. Now, with that being said, I try not to run the air conditioner a lot. Try to leave the windows open as much as I can. So if you're running your AC quite a bit, obviously it's going to be more expensive. But the summers here, I personally think they're pretty mild because I'm used to a much hotter, more humid climate. But some people think the summers here are pretty hot. So I think it just depends on your tolerance for the heat. But some nights you might be able to leave the windows open, let the cool air flow through, and you might not even have to use your air conditioner, which is obviously going to save you quite a bit of money. Now, obviously utilities are going to come into play when you're budgeting for your new lifestyle. Water is surprisingly affordable if you're on city water. Throughout North Dakota, the average is $42 a month. But this is going to surprise you guys. This one is going to surprise you. So if you end up on rural water, in some areas it can be very expensive, like $200 a month or more if you're running your irrigation in the summer. So that is one thing that might really surprise you. This is not utility related, but please do not forget to winterize your irrigation system after the summer is over and we're heading into winter. If you don't do that, it can cause a lot of really expensive future repairs. I know that's not utility related, but I always like to throw that in. If you're moving from a state in the south or something like that, you might not realize. But overall in North Dakota, utilities are actually pretty affordable here. Number 4, okay guys, let's talk a little bit about gas prices. So gas prices here in North Dakota average $2 $4.85 throughout the state. The national average is around $3.03, so we are below the national average. Now, Watford City and some other places might have more expensive gas prices. If you're moving here for the oil field and you're planning on moving to Watford, you can just assume that pretty well everything's going to be more expensive in Watford. And what you're going to spend in gas is vastly going to depend on where you live and work here in North Dakota. So if you're commuting some long distances to work, obviously that's going to be more of an expense to you. Car vehicle maintenance expenses are about average out here, maybe slightly above average. Now, if you want to add like winter tires or auto start, obviously those are some additional expenses to consider, but just one-time expenses instead of monthly. Some of the roads around here can be a little bit hard on your car, especially with the sand and salt that they use in the winter time on the road. If you're living down a rural road that isn't paved, it can be a little bit harder on your vehicle too. I lived down one about 10 years ago, and one thing that I thought was so weird when I moved here is when it rains or there's a lot of snow melt, it's gonna be so muddy on some of those roads that your car might slide around in the mud. Some of those roads can get very muddy. If you end up relocating somewhere like Bismarck or Fargo, you're probably not going to run into that situation quite as much. But Williston and Watford, you can run into some pretty muddy roads, and especially out on the oil field locations. But overall, gas in North Dakota is pretty affordable. Okay. Number 5, let's talk about construction and growth. So North Dakota is experiencing more of a moderate growth right now. Fargo, Bismarck, and Watford City are experiencing the most growth. Williston has actually lost a few people, but that's always going to fluctuate just due to the oil field. There's always a lot of people transitioning in and out of Watford and Williston simply because of the oil field. But Minot and Grand Forks have remained pretty steady. I don't know if you guys can see it, but it's actually snowing right now. I'm gonna try to finish my video for you guys. Minot and Grand Forks are actually pretty steady in terms of growth population wise. Bismarck has actually seen the most growth here in North Dakota this year, population wise and home price wise. Homes here are still moderately appreciating, so we're not seeing the same decline in home prices that some other larger states like Florida or even Texas are seeing right now. So they're moderately appreciating, which means in the future, if you're looking to buy a home, you can expect the home prices to be a little bit higher. Now, it is just a steady appreciation, so you'll find that the Midwest has kind of a more stable real estate market in general, but overall, as of right now, home prices are still pretty affordable, especially when you compare it with the national average. All right, guys, number 6, let's talk about childcare and education costs. So childcare out here is actually a really big topic of discussion right now. It's really interesting because there was a survey done, and like 80% of the people here actually wanted the government to get involved with childcare, which is not very common for North Dakota. Most people out here like little to no government intervention in general. Just let you know that childcare is a topic of discussion out here. So that is something to keep in mind if you have little ones. The average cost for an infant is right around $1,025 a month, and the average cost for a 4-year-old is around $873 a month. So it is a little bit expensive. And for infants and toddlers, there can be a long waiting list for daycare. So if you guys are thinking about making that move out here to North Dakota, you're going to want to get on those wait lists ahead of time so you don't run into any issues when you actually arrive. If you have to get straight to work, you do have questions on that. We help people relocate here all the time. So just give us a call, send us a text, or shoot us an email, and we can definitely help you out with that. Let's talk private schools for a minute. So private schools are actually more affordable here than the national average. They're about $8,000 a year. And we actually have more private school options here in North Dakota than you might realize. We actually have quite a few options. And it is pretty affordable in terms of private schools. So it's roughly half of the national average, actually. So if that's something that you are interested in learning more about, it is a very affordable option out here considering the national average. So I would say overall, you're looking at some pretty nice size expenses if you have infants and toddlers that need full-time childcare. So I'd say overall, childcare can be a pretty big expense out here, but the private school options can be pretty affordable when they're compared with the national average. Number 7, traveling and airport access. So if you're someone who loves to travel for vacation, or you need to travel a lot for work, the airports in North Dakota are actually super easy to navigate. You might be able to park, go in, check your bag, get through security, and get to your gate all in like 20 minutes. So they're very, very convenient that way. Let's talk about a couple of the cons with our airports out here. So we don't have the same availability of flights in North Dakota, so you're likely going to have some connecting flights, which can cause some delays and headaches and just disruptions with your travel plans. And it's also likely going to be more expensive to travel out of North Dakota. Obviously, if you're near Fargo, it's going to be a little bit more affordable, but a lot of the airports in North Dakota simply don't have the same availability of flights. So it depends on where you're traveling, but it's likely going to be a little bit more expensive. Williston actually is the most expensive airport to fly out of in North Dakota, to my knowledge. It is pretty pricey. It's very convenient. It's a very beautiful airport, but if cost is important to you, that's something to consider. Even though they do have some pretty affordable flights through Sun Country to Vegas during certain times of the year. They're like $200 or less. Like I think they're like $174 right now. So some people kind of use that as like a little winter getaway to escape the weather for a couple of days. But if you're looking to travel internationally, sometimes it does make more sense to fly out of Minneapolis just because they have a lot more availability. So overall, if you're looking at flying out of North Dakota, it can be convenient in some aspects, but it is going to come at an elevated cost. Okay, let's talk grocery prices. So North Dakota actually does not have sales tax on groceries. Some other states do. But I've recently read a report online that said North Dakota ranks #1 for cheapest groceries in the United States. I find that hard to believe. We've seen an increase of 6.5% in the last year for groceries due to inflation. So groceries in North Dakota, you're likely not going to want to buy stuff that's out of season. If you end up somewhere in Bismarck or Fargo where you have access to discounted grocery options like Costco or Aldi's, you probably are going to pay slightly below the national average. But if you're in a more rural area, you're going to be paying more for groceries. Williston and Watford City actually have some pretty high grocery prices, and in other rural areas you can expect to pay more as well, just because you're not going to see any of those discounted options, and there might be 1 or 2 grocery store options available. Okay, so let's go over some averages. So the average gallon of milk here in North Dakota is around $4.72 a gallon, and a dozen of eggs averages around $4. If you want organic eggs in some areas, if you're not in Fargo or Bismarck, it's around anywhere from $6.50 all the way up to $9 for organic eggs. So I always recommend finding someone local in your area that has chickens or a locally owned farm to purchase those organic eggs from, or even Costco if, like I said, if you're in Fargo or Bismarck, because they can get kind of expensive if you're looking somewhere like Cashwise or Albertsons, which are 2 of the more popular grocery stores throughout North Dakota. But we also have some locally owned farms here as well. So Bartlett Farms is really awesome. They serve Western North Dakota. They even have a raw milk share, and now they have raw cream as well. So I don't know if you've never had that. It is really delicious. And they deliver eggs as well. So that's more for Western North Dakota, but there are some local farms throughout the entire state. And there's also some great farmers markets in Bismarck and Fargo during the summer where you can get locally grown produce for a decent price, as well as like fresh sourdough bread. and locally made goods, and some of them are really, really delicious. So I always say try to support your local people, of course. But overall, in North Dakota, if you are not near Fargo or Bismarck, you're likely going to end up paying more for groceries if you're in more of a rural area, because you're not going to have access to some of those discounted grocery stores. And this is not grocery related, but Montana does not have sales tax on items that you buy in the store. So if you're looking to make a big purchase or even do like back to school shopping, it might be worth traveling over to Billings to avoid paying the sales tax, especially if you live in Western North Dakota. That's when it might be worth it to travel over to Billings. So not grocery related, but just a way to save a little bit of money since we're talking about cost of living here. Okay, so that wraps up the cost of living in North Dakota. If you guys have questions based on your personal lifestyle, make sure you reach out to us. We help people relocate to North Dakota each and every day. So just send us a text, shoot us an email, or give us a call. And stay tuned for my next video on the top 3 places to live in North Dakota. I release a new video each and every week, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on those new videos.